me make a connected issue. I was working on the book Religion Saves. It was a series of questions that people posted on the internet and voted on, and then ended up writing a book about it. And one of those, curiously enough, out of the top 9 questions, there's like 300 and some thousand votes, birth control. Wasn't a question I was expecting. And did a lot of homework, a lot of research. I went to your website, Eternal Perspectives Ministries at epm.org. And downloaded all your stuff on birth control. And I've got, I think, just about everything you've ever published and read it. And you're a good author, and thank you.
Thank you.
Could you unpack the issue of birth control and abortion when it comes to the pill? I mean, it's a complicated issue, highly discussed and debated. I find that most evangelicals didn't even know there was a potential connection.
Right. Well, historically, just going back on this, I wrote a book called Pro-Life Answers to Pro-Choice Arguments, and the first edition of that book came out in the early 90s. And after I wrote it, I had a couple of people come to me and say, well, you know what? I've heard that the birth control pill can actually cause early abortions. And honestly, my first response was, come on, you got to be kidding. My wife and I had used the pill as a pastor. I recommended when I do premarital counseling, and it was one of the main options. Hey, it's convenient. All it does is prevent ovulation. And so, abortifacient, that never even dawned on me. And I really didn't take it seriously, probably partly because I didn't even want to think about it, because we'd used the pill and I'd recommended the pill and all that. Finally, I said to somebody, well, show me some real research on this, And so somebody challenged me to read through the physician's desk reference, the single most commonly consulted reference for physicians, and just look up these different products, these birth control pills, and see what it says. So I start reading through it, and I come to the very first pill. They all have different names, but they're all, quote, the pill. And so I look it up, and it says this functions in 3 ways. It prevents ovulation. However, it doesn't always prevent ovulation. But if it fails to prevent ovulation, it thickens the cervical mucus, making it more difficult for the sperm to move in and for conception, to take place. But if that doesn't work, it also thins the endometrium, the lining, so that if conception does take place, the fertilized egg will be unable to implant in the endometrium. Right, so it's flushed out. So, okay, first one now, of course, there's larger issues that you can deal with, birth control per se, conception, contraceptives per se, and you can argue that issue. But now I'm not even talking about that. I'm just now talking only about the abortion issue. The first one is not abortive. The second one is not abortive. The third one is abortive if a conception has actually taken place. The chromosomes, mother and father welded together, a new human being has come into place. And you're doing something which is preventing that new human being from receiving the placement, the food, the nutrition in order to grow and live and survive. That's a huge problem. So I looked at that and I thought, okay, but this is just one, of these. So I started reading through, and they all say the same thing. So then I got on the phone and called 4 different birth control pill manufacturers, the largest 4 in the country. No, I had one physician friend call one of them, and I called the other 3. And we found out exactly the same thing, that when we talked to people who were experts there and their background in chemistry and everything else, yes, this is how it functions. This really is true. So I wrote this book, Does the Birth Control Pill, Cause Abortions? Just basically to warn people, no, the majority of times it works. It prevents conception. And then sometimes it doesn't, but then it prevents conception through, the cervical mucus thing. And sometimes that third mechanism kicks in with the thing in the endometrium, so it's not implanted. And sometimes all three mechanisms fail, and that's called a woman who takes the pill having a baby. You know, and so we know sometimes that obviously these other mechanisms have failed. But the question is, when do the first two fail, but the third one succeed? Mm-hmm. And when that happens, we've taken the life of a human being created in God's image. So I wrote this book, and it's, I guess somewhat naively, thinking, because I interviewed these different physicians, and I did all, you know, I don't have a background in medicine, but I have a background in research. I know how to research. So I put this all together, and medical journals, I'm quoting from them, that established this. I publish it, and then there's a huge backlash
I can imagine.
from Christian physicians who say, this isn't true. And then I would say, what isn't true? I mean, just show me. And they would say, well, that just isn't, you know, because that it just doesn't do that. And I would, well, you can't just say it doesn't do that. Show me evidence. And there was actually a group of 20 of them that came out with a statement refuting this position, the birth control pill can cause abortions, and they didn't cite one single scientific or medical study. They just said, we just don't think it does. And I've got hundreds of footnotes of medical journals and, you know, interviews with all of these people. And that's when I really learned that we as Christians, and there are many wonderful Christian physicians, of course, and I know a number of Christian physicians who no longer prescribe the pill, and it's been they've lost a lot of money for it because they lose, as patients, people who want to stay on the pill because they're the ones that, you know, prescribe it. So they go to other physicians. And there's just a lot of Christian physicians that do not want to do that. And I just think that are not being honest with the evidence.